Welcome to Past the Projections.
Fantasy experts, really. You should really consider us the pinnacle of fantasy football knowledge.
The host, Adam Skinner, the coach. There was a lot of debate on whether or not he would be that great. The guru, Thomas Lozano.
Kid's a playmaker, like you touched on there for a second.
Statman, Danny Pert.
Definitely a touchdown threat. Love the frame, love what I saw from him.
The wizard, Chris Roth.
Solid player with good floors.
The coach, the guru, the statistician, and the wizard. Talking fantasy football, Dynasty League specifically.
I just come here because I like to talk. And if you want to listen to me, it's completely on you.
Oh, back again, gentlemen. Glad to be here. Past the Projections crew, as always. Adam Skinner, Thomas Lozano, Chris Roth, Daniel Pert, still out. And, I'm sure he'll make a guest appearance at some point. But we're not holding our breath. Take your time, buddy.
There were rumors this week, but, being a responsible adult looks like won over this week.
Yep, I'm sure he had other priorities, and it's going to be like that for a little while. That's okay, though. But today, we have a couple NFL news and notes to talk about. We also have some nice camp battles that we're watching going into the training camps as they start to open up a little more moving forward. And then, in case you hadn't noticed with us, we have started doing league audits, so keep your eye out for those. We're going to start looking at random leagues of people around the Dynasty community and rating their teams and kind of giving our thoughts and opinions on it. And if you're interested in it, you can always send us an email at pasttheprojections@gmail.com, and we might rate your league as well. Audit, as I should say. I got to start using the lingo. Thomas, any news and notes or anything you want to add before we get moving?
No, not really.
All right, I'll throw it to you anyway because I know you have some things you want to talk about.
Just kicking it, just kicking it.
always. Out in Denver, where I will be next week, I bet.
There we go. It's getting beautiful out here. City's waking up. I was walking around last night, the night before, and it's alive. It's great.
Right. Well, I'm going to San Diego, so I'm gonna let you know how that is, which is probably pretty nice as well. And then I'm just gonna tour the country and podcast. Sounds like the life. Why am I complaining?
Modern day Jack Kerouac right here. Look at that.
Exactly. That's exactly what I'm doing. I am. I'm going to write that down and before I forget. But NFL news to mention. A couple quick things. A Marquise Lee sighting and then a non-sighting. He is gone.
Yeah.
So, signed with the Niners, 4 days later released. Was there ever any hope of him making the team, really?
I don't believe so.
No.
Not with what they do. Maybe as a return man, special teamer, but not with what they do and the guys that they have there already. No.
Yeah, the youth movement there I thought would win out. So even when he was signed, I thought it was a weird team for him to sign with. But he was a big name 5 years ago with the Jags. He had some years, and he's just old and not really relevant. So that is enough on Marquise Lee. I'm sure we'll probably not see him again. The other news, the bigger news, Julio Jones sighting in many different ways. Who was recruiting him? He wants to go to the Patriots. What team was recruiting him? Oh, the Cardinals. DeAndre Hopkins.
Yeah, DeAndre Hopkins said he would restructure.
Yep, and then you see him at an airport. What airport was he at?
I don't even know, but he was wearing a Dallas Cowboys sweater.
Ugh. Why?
Taking a picture. I don't know.
That was so weird.
He's trolling.
He's clearly not happy and clearly doesn't want to be in Atlanta. What does this mean? That's a big name to be moving around. What does that mean for him, for the Falcons, for whatever team he lands on? What do you think?
I believe he still has a couple of elite years left in him. He was injured a good part of last year, but even when he's on the field, he's Julio Jones. He makes the plays. He gets the targets. He produces the yardage. Touchdowns, we've always known those have been hard to come by as Julio Jones owners, but he's still been an elite number one, and I believe he still has that talent in him. And these places I believe that are looking at him, Tennessee, Arizona, New England, there's a couple other places. Baltimore, I believe, is on that list as well. So he could certainly shake up a couple of wide receiver rooms if he gets traded to any of these places. But I believe that it's going to be huge dividends for Calvin Ridley and Kyle Pitts. I believe their value goes up. Matt Ryan's value maybe comes down just a little bit. Yep. But Julio's, I don't think it's going to change too much because he's still going to command that target share.
Yeah, I mean, regardless of where he goes, with how big his contract is, he's going to need to go to a team that needs him. So he's going to command target share. He's going to go to a place that clearly likes his talent. I don't think he goes to Arizona. Can they even have another receiver there? Are they allowed?
I mean, Hopkins said he would restructure his contract specifically for Julio.
Yeah, but like, it's just the.
I mean, past that'd just be ridiculous.
That's just entirely too much talent. But yeah, I think I could see Baltimore being a really good destination, and New England, obviously. I mean, putting Julio Jones in New England with a young Mac Jones, that's a nice safety blanket to have for a young quarterback and a wide receiver room that really needs some talent. So I'm not less concerned on the Julio side. I'm more, like you said, I think the Calvin Ridley, Kyle Pitts stock might have just bumped a little bit. Not that it was down anyway, but you bump Calvin Ridley to a clear number one. I mean, there will be questions about whether he can handle it, but boy, he'd be a good guy to own right now, and you know he's going to get a lot of targets. So, yeah, interesting time in Atlanta. I'm curious how this plays out.
And that'll also open up some interesting spots as a wide receiver too there in Atlanta.
Exactly.
Like, is it going to be Russell Gage's time? Is it going to be Olamide Zacchaeus? However you say his name. I mean, there's some options out there, but going from Julio Ridley is 1 and 2 to Ridley and question mark
Pitts.
Yeah,
Pitts baby.
Valid, yeah.
Out because they still have Austin Hooper. So, I mean, Hayden Hurst. My fault. Hayden Hurst is still there. So you never know. Yeah, interesting question. Speaking of interesting questions, I know there are other interesting questions all around the league on a whole bunch of different rooms that are crowded right now, especially after the draft and after some other signings. So I know today we have a few rooms that we're keeping our eye on. Thomas, what are your favorite training camp situations that you're watching to see who comes out?
I mean, I've got a few of them here. I'm just going to start at the top. Rondale Moore is a wide receiver that I liked coming out of the rookie draft. And he goes to a place where it's a little bit crowded. Ideally, we want to see him line up in the slot. And ultimately, he's going to have to beat out a guy like Andy Isabella or a Christian Kirk to assume that role. But I believe he has what it takes to do that. A.J. Green's also part of that wide receiver room that's new that he'll have to compete with. But I don't see, I mean, with a lot of the names I see on this depth chart and the talent that Rondale Moore has, I don't see a lot of these guys really beating him out for quite possibly the second man in targets on that totem pole.
I'm curious too. I loved his talent coming out. He was ranked as the 4th receiver on the board for most people, sometimes even higher. Mm-hmm. I didn't think the fit was right, and it gave me a whole lot of questions about what they're doing with Christian Kirk and Andy Isabella. I mean, do they really not have any confidence in those two? Because they actually I thought they performed all right. Christian Kirk, especially when he was given the opportunity, he had some moments. So I don't know what it means. Either it means they really don't believe in those young receivers, or they're just doubling down on the fact that AJ Green is really old and DeAndre Hopkins is older. But yeah, I'm curious about that camp out. That's definitely one to keep anybody's eye on with how high he's going to be drafted in most leagues.
Yeah, I mean, Hopkins is getting older, but I believe he still has several elite years left in him as long as he commands such a high target share. Really, my only concern, at least from a fantasy aspect, with Rondale Moore and really with anybody in the Cardinals wide receiver room is going to be volume. We know that Kyler Murray likes to run. We know when he does throw the ball, he's looking to DeAndre Hopkins. But who's going to start to definitively be that second man in line?
Yeah, I'm wondering if they go more 4 receiver sets too, actually, thinking about it, because I know Cliff Kingsbury likes to spread it out.
The spread.
Uh-huh. And so maybe that's what they're doing with all these receivers.
Just beat them with speed.
Well, absolutely. You got 2 great, huge, or tall, talented targets on the outside in Nuke and AJ, and then in the inside you got your choice. I mean, They have a ton of speed. Andy Isabella, don't forget how quick that kid is.
Yes, absolutely.
They can really spread and hurt some defenses, and I know Cliff with that spread offense wants to run that. So maybe we'll see more of that this year. So also a little bit of hurt for James Conner's stock with all the receivers there, but that's one. Cardinals are definitely something to keep their eye on.
One thing too, it pains me to say it, but AJ Green is not the AJ Green of years past.
Right.
Last year, his catch percentage was just right around 45%. And unfortunately, I don't necessarily see. Hopefully, the change of scenery will help him, but I don't see it changing all that much.
Yeah, I don't think he'll change a whole lot either. But he's still a big name. He'll still command. He'll have actually probably some favorable matchups just because he's lined up opposite Hopkins. So. We'll see. I'm curious in that one. One I've got my eye on is the Niners running back room. I'm kind of curious about what plays out there. I know you're big on Trey Sermon, and you were before the draft. And he landed. And they trade up in the third round to go grab this kid. So clearly they like him. But they also signed Wayne Gallman, who actually had a pretty good year last year with the Giants, coming in for Saquon. And then don't forget Jeff Wilson and Raheem Mostert are still there. Mm-hmm. And they also picked up Elijah Mitchell in the 7th round. There are some good running backs in that room. I don't know how they keep all of them. And we also know Wilson and Mostert are on 1 year, only have 1 year left on their deals. So, who do you, obviously I think you see Trey Sermon coming out. I do too. But how much? They like to mix and match in San Fran. I want to know what they do with that situation.
I don't believe it's going to be immediate where we're going to see Trey Sermon really start to become that top dog there, that lead back there, just because Shanahan is notorious for wanting to use the committee. He did the same thing with Devontae Freeman and Tevin Coleman, and he's done the same thing there in San Fran his entire tenure, where he's had 2-3 running backs handling the workload. It's just all a matter of which one's going to be the hot hand more often than not. And I think ultimately what they've done, at least with this draft, and at least what they're hoping they've done, is that they don't have to now draft a running back here over the next several years. They've got their Trey Sermon. If Elijah Mitchell works out, they've now kind of revamped and made that running back room young again. So now you've got Trey Sermon, Elijah Mitchell as kind of your Devontae Freeman, Tevin Coleman style backs, where he can continue to run his system just with new faces.
Yeah, I think that too. They're probably phasing out Mostert and Wilson. They are getting older anyway, and both with the 1 year left. The Gallman signing is the one that throws a little wrench in this. I'm kind of curious why they signed him. I think he got a 3-year deal, but it was an interesting signing to add nonetheless. But as you mentioned, Kyle Shanahan loves to have his choice of backs, and with the injuries they typically have there in San Fran as well, I can see that making sense. Who else you got?
Yeah, next one I think is going to be a little tricky just because there is just still so much, cloudiness surrounding the quarterback situation. But Amari Rodgers against, Alan Lazard, NVS, Equinemius St. Brown. I know they re-signed Malik Taylor to a 1 year deal just recently. So they want to kind of keep that room crowded and filled. But if Amari Rodgers can show that he's head and shoulders better than these guys in their room, and he starts to get number 2 targets from, presumably Aaron Rodgers, I believe that could be huge for his fantasy value, his dynasty value, especially if Aaron Rodgers does stay put. But as far as making an immediate impact, he could start to see those number 2 targets behind Devontae Adams, because ultimately they didn't address tight ends, so they're going to believe in Tanyan and bring him back. But they traded this, or I believe they traded up for this kid, Amari Rodgers, to bring him in. So it's going to be interesting to see how well he does in his first year, and whether or not he's going to have the man with his surname passing him the ball.
Yeah, right. That's actually, obviously the quarterback situation is the first and foremost there, but we were saying before the draft we wanted to see who the Packers went with at receiver, and they didn't make a big splash, taking Amari Rodgers, a kid who not many people had high on their boards. He's getting a look just because I think the talent in Green Bay has been the question. Who's that number 2 opposite Devontae Adams? And you've had Lazard there, you've had MVS, you've had Equinemius St. Brown there for years, and they haven't really produced at a high level consistently. So I think that's the only really reason we're talking about Amari Rodgers right now. I'm not sure his talent level is much better than them anyway. I don't know if he gets on the field as quickly. I agree with you, though. It's one to watch because, with the amount of Aaron Rodgers being a Hall of Fame, one of the best quarterbacks of all time, and having the number 1 receiver, arguably, in Dynasty opposite you, is a pretty good situation to be in. and we've been waiting for that wide receiver 2 in Green Bay for years to step up. Can Amari Rodgers be that kid? And if he is, you can probably get him late. He's going late in drafts right now, 2nd round, 3rd round.
Mm-hmm.
That's a steal. So yes, that is definitely one. I agree.
Yeah, and you hit the nail on the head there. We've been waiting for a wide receiver 2 out of Green Bay. We wanted it to be Marquez Valdez-Scantling. We wanted it to be Equanimeous St. Brown. But those guys just haven't stepped up in a way that a wide receiver 2 with that quarterback output should be stepping up.
Yeah, and I think that actually was why Mike McCarthy was ran out. But now you see, even with the new system, they're just not. I don't know if it's the system or the players.
With this system, wide receiver 1 is eating, okay,
right.
And then the running backs are eating. But anybody after that, it's kind of good stuff.
Yeah, unless you're Robert Tonyan, who I still don't like, even with the situation. He just too touchdown dependent.
Yeah.
Another one I'm looking at. We'll go running backs again. I'll go with the Jets running back room. I like Michael Carter. I liked him coming in. I thought he was underrated. I actually had him 6th on my board even, and I really didn't say anyone outside the top 3 was worthy of a spot, but I saw right before the draft a lot of NFL teams were high on this kid, and he landed in a really good spot. Granted, the Jets did sign Tevin Coleman. The Michael P. Ryan's there. They still have Jamal Adams. It's just not great talent. So I like the situation for Michael Carter coming out, but I don't know if any of these backs are going to be that fantasy relevant anyway, because the Jets are a new team with a new quarterback and a new system as well. I want to know who's there, just because Michael Carter, running backs are hard to get in Dynasty, and he's one you can get later in the 1st right now is where he's going typically, maybe even the 2nd round in some leagues, and if it's super flex, obviously a lot later. But that's a situation I want to know how it plays out in case you can get a running back on the cheap, and I think Michael Carter could be that guy.
I do like his talent. I do like what he offers. I believe he's the best back in this current room. With kind of how the Jets are rebuilding, restructuring everything, typically running back always comes last in a rebuild. At least as far as like the actual NFL goes, you'll see that back come along once they've instilled kind of everything else. And so I wouldn't be shocked to possibly see them still be in the market for a back. And maybe Michael Carter goes to this complimentary back that I think is more suited for. But I do believe he's the best running back in the room that they have there as far as talent and what he offers and his skill set. Tevin Coleman, I don't believe has what it takes to be lead back. Michael P. Ryan, I believe he flashed a little bit, maybe 1 week last year, but nothing that really stood out and bounced and jumped off the page. And so Michael Carter definitely has a chance to shine if he comes into camp and really does what he's supposed to do, which is outproduce these vets as the new young stud on the block and really engrave himself a role for this upcoming year. But just depending on what they decide to do with that room, it could be murkier in the future.
Yeah, I agree. it's just there's not a ton of talent. That's why I think Michael Carter's there. I said Jamal Adams earlier. I meant Josh Adams, which I should have known as an Eagles fan. Josh Adams. He had a good game last year, I think, for the Jets in one of the games. He got to come in and spot start. Mm-hmm. And he has talent at times, but you're right. I don't see any of the other backs, maybe LaMichael P. Ryan being the one coming out of there, but I'd still be curious if he's the one coming out. Yeah. Dynasty-wise, that's a chance to get a cheap back in a good situation, an up-and-coming situation maybe. With Robert Saleh, who likes to run the ball, coming from that San Francisco offense. He might have some Kyle Shanahan in him. So I want to know who comes out of that situation personally. But we'll see. Who else you got your eye on?
So the next one I have on my list, I think, is one of the more obvious ones. You've got Justin Fields versus Andy Dalton. And coming in, I think a lot of Bears fans really, forgot about Andy Dalton. They got Justin Fields. They were amped up. They were hyped up. They want him to be on the field come week 1 as the starter, and he's going to be given the opportunity to do so. Here come camp. Him and Andy Dalton are certainly going to have a QB competition, and I don't think that this is just Dalton's job anymore, like they were proclaiming early in the offseason, because Justin Fields is good at quarterback. So I think he does good things for Allen Robinson's value, depending on another kind of interesting can battle what happens there at wide receiver, because I know that they also drafted a wide receiver as well. Daz Newsome, I believe, and so kind of who's going to step up behind A-Rob. You still got the running game there, and then he's still going to Justin Fields. That is, he's still going to offer tremendous fantasy value with his legs. So ideally, I'd like to see Justin Fields on the field week 1, but it's going to be a camp battle with Andy Dalton, or at least a competition that we're going to have to label it as that.
Well, they're going to say that, of course, but you also have to take into account the fact that they're in Chicago. That's the Bears. These fans have been starved for a quarterback for years, and they are not going to be patient watching Andy Dalton come in and lead their team, even if he does well, unless he's winning every single game and looking great doing it. They're going to call for, oh my God, Fields. Sorry, jeez, how did Justin Fields. They're going to call really quick for Fields to come step in. And I think Fields starts week 1. That situation, I really liked Fields too. I think of the quarterbacks in this draft, behind T-Law, he was the only other one that I was like could probably start week 1. I don't like Zach Wilson very much, but I just think he's more ready than most. He has a good mind on him. I want to see what he can do, and he landed in a really good situation. So yes, I'm going to watch that as well. Nobody's thinking Andy Dalton's coming in and leading this team all year. I would be shocked if he's not starting by even week 8. So Justin Fields stock, if you can get him as a quarterback, I'd plan on him being a starter as well.
And for those of us who haven't drafted yet, as far as rookie drafts, let's just go under the assumption that he has the starting job. Where are you drafting? I guess it's going to depend, but let's say it's 1 QB league, 12 teams. Where are we drafting Justin Fields?
Yeah, if you assume he's starting, I still take him 3 behind Trey Lance. I like Trey Lance a lot. But if you want more immediate production, I take him 2. It depends on what you need. Are you looking to compete this year? If you're trying to compete this year, that's the guy to go with, because he will at least get you something this year to look at and value moving forward. Whereas Trey Lance, most likely is not starting this year. Even if he does, he'll be coming in and he doesn't have a whole lot of snaps under his belt. I expect him to struggle at least at first. So if you need more right now, Fields. If you need more later, Lance, in my book.
Sure.
But, yeah.
So about what pick would that be? So say a 12 team.
Well, SF, you're looking, like I said, it's the second quarterback off the board. So Superflex, we're talking 1, 2, 3. I think those 3 are top 3 picks no matter what in Superflex.
Well, let's say non-Superflex.
Non-Superflex leagues, I'd say, it depends how bad you need a quarterback.
Is he an early second?
Early second, mid-second, I think. I think he goes mid-second and mid to late second, really. I'm not sure I'd take him much higher. I think T-Law is late first. I could see Fields and Lance right around mid to late second in my book.
Sure.
What about you, Thomas?
Yeah, I'd slot him in right around 2-3 and a 12 team. Just behind some of these position players I still like a little bit better than him, but as far as next available and best player goes with this rookie draft, I don't know that I'd let him slip much further than that, especially under the assumption that he's going to be the starting quarterback.
Yeah, absolutely. That'll change his value. Another one I'm looking at, the Giants wide receiver room. I'm actually very curious. I was kind of surprised that Cadarius Toney, I know they were really interested in Devonta Smith, and that my Eagles jumped in front and took him away, and then they went after Toney later. I was still surprised. I'm wondering which of these receivers do they not like, because they signed Kenny Galladay, who's a great receiver in my book. Sterling Shepard and Darius Slayton have been serviceable wide receivers and have some talent there. So where does Toney fit in? He was unpolished. He seems like more of a return man. Is he going to get on the field right away and be the playmaker in that offense? So they still have Saquon. I'm kind of curious what, with a first-round pick with the draft capital, like you like to mention a lot, you have to wonder what they're going to do with him. He's going to be on the field more than not. Who's the odd man out, and then how are they using him? I want to know, and I'm going to keep my eye on that.
Ultimately, I do see, not necessarily Toney being phased out. Joe Judge, head coach, just recently came out and said they want to use him in multiple roles. So whether it's going to be lined up outside in the slot, in the backfield, returning. So they're gonna find a way to get him touches. Maybe it may not come as traditional receiver, but he's still going to log some touches here this first year. Next year, I think, is when it's going to start to get interesting, is because I believe Slayton, I think, is re-signed through next year, and so I believe they might potentially cut ties there. Galladay, they just brought in; they're going to keep him. But I could see him, making an impact this year. Maybe not necessarily, like I said, as a traditional wide receiver, but still kind of carving a role, and then maybe getting more of those wide receiver targets next year once it clears up there.
Yeah, I was wondering, just because of how much they talked about receiver, and like I said, they wanted Devontae Smith so badly. With all the other holes on that team, they clearly wanted a receiver there, and I'm wondering why. First off, because I thought the receivers were okay, and also with Toney, I don't see how he fits in, and I want to see what he can do. But to me, he looks more like a Miles Austin, not Miles Austin. Who's the Tavon? Austin? I think it was Tavon Austin, like a style with that quick, speedy slot receiver who might not quite translate to the NFL. He doesn't have that, those great hands. He's more just a flash in the pan kind of kid, maybe. That's just what I see. I'm not as high on him, and I think that room doesn't serve him well in his abilities.
They did also recently bring in John Ross and Dante Pettis as well, which crowds it just a little bit more.
Yeah, Pettis was all right with San Francisco, and John Ross, speedy too. Another Toney. So maybe they're going to do some different things on offense this year. I'm curious. Who else you got, Thomas?
Next up, I'm going to go ahead and keep it in the QB category. Mac Jones and Cam Newton, I think, is going to be interesting to watch in camp. I do still believe Cam Newton's going to be the guy there, but how much and how fast, how much do they believe the Patriots? How much do they believe in Mac Jones? How fast do they want to get him on the field? Are they okay with him sitting the entire first year? Is he going to come out in camp and just completely leave Cam Newton in the dust as far as being the quarterback for their system goes? That's going to be what I'm going to be looking for this summer in camp, because if it's Mac Jones, does that open things up more for their playmakers? And let's say they bring in a Julio Jones. Is that better or worse for Julio's value because he said he wants to go there to play with Cam specifically? There's a lot of questions, that I think that's going to have to be answered, come camp. But that's one of the ones that, again, could have some dynasty implications as far as Mac Jones' value, because if he comes out, looks good, and everyone's eager to see him, out in real time, that could certainly drive his value up.
This is actually one of the more intriguing battles to me. With that first-round draft capital, Mac Jones is the guy for the future. They're going to have him there. But I think Cam Newton's a better quarterback. I love Cam Newton, always have. He's struggled with the injuries, and he's not been the same ever since, but he's still Cam Newton. He won an MVP. Don't forget, this guy can play. Been to the Super Bowl. Has some great leadership qualities. I really like Cam Newton. And then, as you mentioned with Julio, they bring him in to play with Cam. I don't know how quickly Mac Jones gets on the field. But, seeing what Cam has done the last few years, it could be quicker or sooner than we think, just because Cam has really struggled and hasn't had a fantasy relevant receiver around him in years. So I am a fan of Cam. But I want to know. I want to know how much they believe in Mac and how quickly they're willing to put him out there and either get him moving and get him developed, or are they just throwing him to the wolves? Mm-hmm. So that's a good one. I'm going to go another one. I like the Dolphins running backs just because going into the draft, that was a situation I wanted to see what they did, and they didn't draft anybody. So is this Malcolm Brown signing the thing? Is he now the running back in Miami? Or are they going back to Myles Gaskin and Salvin Ahmed? They had some talent there. Each of those backs, when they were rolling for the Dolphins last year, had some solid games until they all got hurt. I personally see Myles Gaskin being the guy, but they didn't just bring Malcolm Brown in to sit around and watch. So I'm kind of curious which guy steps up most and gets the bill there.
Yeah, I'm definitely leaning Myles Gaskin on this one, and if you're looking for an RB2 at a cheap price, we'll say Myles Gaskin is a guy that you should probably be targeting sooner than later, before people start to realize that you're right. They did not address running back in the draft. They didn't bring really even a high-profile free agent. Malcolm Brown's that short yard bruiser guy. Myles Gaskins, when he was on the field last year, produced bottom end RB1 numbers, high end RB2 numbers. So, excuse me, we're talking a full 16 games. he could potentially be a high-end RB2 guy that we right now could be getting on the cheap. But I get where you're coming from as far as the eagerness to see what else might lie there. But Myles Gaskin should run away with that job.
Yeah, he should. I agree, but Malcolm Brown wasn't brought in cheap. It was 1.7 or 1 3/4 million for a 1-year deal. I mean, it's not a long-term deal. He's not the long-term solution, but that's almost $2 million a year for a running back. There's a reason he's there.
Sure.
And Salvon Ahmed had some games too. I don't know if it's as much the back or if it's the system that's really carrying it there. But
well, I mean, he certainly has proved to have durability issues, Myles Gaskin. And so certainly could be an insurance policy with Malcolm Brown, but Malcolm Brown's never, wowed or flashed good RB1 potential there, at least when given the touches. And Myles Gaskin, just given opportunity and where he's at and upside, like we talk about opportunity and upside. It's kind of looking like it's going to work out for him, and especially if that Miami offense is as good as it's projected to be, he could be in for a big year.
Yeah, it could be a good situation. Last one that you're keeping your eye on.
Last one, and so this one's it could be all over the place. It could not be, but Detroit wide receiver 2 behind Brashad Perriman. I mean, they brought in Brashad Perriman there, and right now he looks to be the most, polished, accomplished wide receiver that they have in that room. I know they just drafted Amon-Ra St. Brown, which I absolutely love that pick for them. He's more of a slot guy and is going to be, I believe, slot in there as a slot guy, or possibly even on the outside, and he works Swift in the slot. But they still have Quintez Cephas there. They've got, I believe they have one more vet there that I can't. Tyrell Williams, and so it's just one of those things where who's going to actually be the guy? Tyrell Williams has never showed that he can put up sustainable wide receiver numbers, maybe some flex appeal, but nothing that's been catching the eye popping. But I think Amon-Ra St. Brown certainly has a chance to really inject himself as a guy and make an immediate impact there. But don't be surprised. You heard it here. Brashad Perriman could be number 1 wide receiver 1 in Detroit.
Well, that's immediately the first thing I heard when you said it was Brashad Perriman. I mean, he's not necessarily wide receiver 1. I'm curious in that situation too, but I think you're right. I think you are actually right in that assessment that Brashad Perriman is going to be the guy there. They brought him in, and he is the most accomplished receiver they have. He's going to get a chance. He's going to be on the field. They don't really have anyone else to take his spot. I think people are sleeping on Quintez Cephas. I love Quintez Cephas. Yeah. And he's a tall target on the outside. He will be out there. And I think you're right with Amon-Ra St. Brown. They're going to put him in the slot more often. But he can play both, too. He's versatile, and I think that's why Detroit took him, because he can play a little bit of everything. A really smart player, makes a lot of good plays. The situation's interesting. But, with Jared Goff, too, that's the other part. How much does that play into it? There's a lot of opportunity. I'm not sure what it means fantasy-wise, if any of these guys are even worth gambling on. Big time. I mean,
I dare call it upside. Detroit fortified the offensive line. Jared Goff has shown that he can run 3 and 4 wide receiver sets in LA. I'm not saying that that's necessarily what Detroit wants to do, but there's been talk, and we've seen it, of Swift also working out of the slot. So do we have 2 guys working on the slot, 2 guys working on the outsides, and Jared Goff potentially supporting, 2 of these guys, maybe 3? It's not out of the realm of possibility. And like I said, given what they've done with that line, they want to protect the quarterback, and they want to be able to run the ball. So it'll be interesting to see for sure just who ends up being the next guy, really ultimately in my eyes behind DeAndre Swift as far as positional playmakers.
And another noteworthy thing, always remember that defenses matter in the sense that they don't have one. And they're going to be throwing a lot and behind a lot in games. So that's also good for receivers in Detroit. Even if they're not putting up tons of getting a lot of touchdowns, they will be getting a lot of targets, and that's always good. So interesting. I'm curious. My last one that I'm also curious about is the Ravens, actually, receiver room. With everything they did this offseason. Holy cow. Sammy Watkins, Rashad Bateman, Tylan Wallace, all into the mix now. And now we're talking possibly Julio Jones. But Malcolm Brown, what does that mean? Hollywood Brown was this big name a couple years ago. He was supposed to be the guy and he hasn't done anything for the most part. And now they bring in 3 receivers. Is he out of the mix? I love Rashad Bateman. I think he's fantastic, and he's probably the best receiver in this room. But Sammy Watkins, that's a good player who has shown that he can put up one giant game every year and get hurt for the rest. But I'm curious who the guys to step up. Tylan Wallace actually on my board. I think I had him 8th or 9th. They got 2 of the best receivers in the draft. I think this is a very interesting situation moving forward. And if I were a betting man, I would go with Rashad Bateman and Sammy Watkins as the guys. With the Tylan Wallace shout out in those 3 receiver sets, I think Malcolm Brown's done personally, and I'm out on his stock if I have him.
I don't believe you. I don't agree with that either. Marquise Brown.
My fault.
Marquise Brown, in my opinion, has always been a complimentary style wide receiver. He's never really projected as that number 1 guy. He's certainly a game breaker and has the big playability, but he needs somebody else to help him so that he's not the center of attention. Rashad Bateman's going to do just that. Even Sammy Watkins, I believe, is going to do just that. And I still stick by what I say. Sammy Watkins is going to have 3 touchdowns week 1, but will be injured for the rest of the season after that. And so then you're going to have Rashad Bateman and you're going to have Hollywood Brown there. I still like Tylan Wallace and what he brings, but I think you have Tylan Wallace, Rashad Bateman, Marquise Brown out of the slot. I still think that he's still going to command a higher target share than Tylan Wallace, just because he has that big playability and can still rip the top off a defense for sure.
Yeah, and that's the whole thing with Tylan Wallace. He's more of a deep threat. Sorry with the Malcolm Brown. I had him on the brain after this Dolphin stock. Yeah, Marquise, Hollywood Brown. Look, the talent's been there. Everyone loved the kid coming out, and he just hasn't had an opportunity. So you're right. He's going to get more of an opportunity this year. But I really think Rashad Bateman's the guy on the field for sure. He has to be. I mean, they put a lot of stock into this kid. And then Sammy Watkins, they brought him in on a pretty big contract. Yeah, I don't know if Hollywood's going to step up because he had opportunity, he had chances, and he hasn't done anything. Is that more him or is that more Lamar? Well, I guess we're going to find out this year because they certainly surround Lamar with a ton of targets and a ton of weapons. So is it the Ravens' offense? Is it because the system, or are we talking Lamar Jackson's shortcomings?
Well, I think it could have just been as a whole a team shortcomings because 2019 they had an historic season. Like I had mentioned on previous podcasts, they led the league in points that year, and they led the league in yards and rushing yards. Lamar Jackson had 36 passing touchdowns. That's long forgotten because it was 2 years ago. But I believe that they opened that back up for him and let him do what he can do. You bring on guys like Bateman who can command attention. Mark Andrews kind of comes back and rounds back into form. That 2019 Marquise Brown that was a top 20 wide receiver was tearing the roof off of defenses because they couldn't stop Mark Andrews underneath. And I can't think of, they had another wide receiver there.
Snead.
Was it Snead that year that was just is really helping out in those underneaths and those out routes, giving Marquise Brown a chance to do what he does, and that's really just turn the burners on.
Yeah, no, you're right. I mean, the talent's there. They have plenty. I'm just curious which guys are going to get on the field more. I like Hollywood. The Sammy Watkins signing to me opened more eyes, and with the 2 receivers drafted, that part
they needed depth, and I don't think they're counting on Sammy Watkins. 1, full time, 2, long term.
Yeah, also true.
Also, reportedly, they were trying to trade for Julio. They're inquiring, at least, about Julio before the draft, and then they were told no. And then so their draft of those 2 receivers is, in part, a reaction to that, knowing they actually couldn't get Julio in there. So, does that mean they're going to try and slip Bateman into that kind of role that Julio would have played?
I think Julio for Tylan Wallace, something like that. That's trade bait for sure. Interesting. I like that. Speaking of your analysis there, Chris, you had some interesting ones you were looking at.
So I had 2, just real quick. One, I'm interested in is going to be who's actually going to be the wide receiver 2 for the Titans. So we talk about all the I feel like every time we bring someone up here, it's okay. This is what it could be, unless Julio shows up.
Right.
So I'm personally, I think this would be the best spot for Julio to land in. I think him and AJ Brown would be a very dynamic duo. Tannehill thrown to them. I think you support both of them. That was one of the weaknesses there. Corey Davis did a serviceable job last year, but just not, he didn't quite do enough. If they can line those two up together, that'd be amazing. But if he doesn't, though...
Yeah, Josh Reynolds, Des Fitzpatrick, who's going to step up into that role? There's an opportunity there. I agree with that.
Yeah, I'm thinking Josh Reynolds, at least for the first half of the season, because he has proven that he can do it with LA. Granted, he was behind Woods and Cup at the time, so he couldn't really perform so much. I think this might be his time to shine, if so. And also Des Fitzpatrick, I think he's going to land into that role eventually, but it looks like it might take him a little bit of time to get there.
I like Des Fitzpatrick personally. Thomas?
Yeah, I like what he definitely brings to the table there. Josh Reynolds, who, you can get almost for free, right? He's one of those guys I think is being slept on right now. They don't have a number 2 wide receiver. They don't have anybody eating up those targets that are vacated by Jonnu Smith, Corey Davis.
Yeah, don't forget Johnny Smith's gone, yeah.
So there's definitely mouths to feed there, but who wants to eat is what it's going to come down to. And I do like Des Fitzpatrick there, but don't sleep on Josh Reynolds. Josh Reynolds is going to get his opportunities to start there, I believe, at the beginning of the year, and really hold on to his job there. And if they throw as much as they had been throwing under their new regime and under Ryan Tannehill, Josh Reynolds could be a sleepy pick next year. This year.
I like that too. Yeah, I think Chris, your analysis is spot on. I like Des Fitzpatrick more long term, but for this year, but maybe the entire year, and if he does well longer, Josh Reynolds is the guy, I think, for now at least.
As long as Julio doesn't show up.
Exactly. For now.
but even if Julio shows up, we're talking a couple of years, Des Fitzpatrick could certainly stick around there and outlast Julio and still claim a spot next to AJ Brown, who I don't believe is going anywhere anytime soon.
No, AJ's going to finish his career there. I'd be surprised if he him.
Jesus, stud.
Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah, and Chris, what was your? I like the other.
So the next one was kind of one of the bigger ones out there that I'm surprised you guys didn't pick up. Was the quarterback battle for the Saints? We're looking at Taysom Hill. We were looking at Jameis Winston. Taysom Hill was the one that started when Breeze was out last year, much to most of our surprises, because we all thought that they brought in Winston specifically for that reason. But now, so he has Taysom Hill has a huge contract, very, very little of it guaranteed. Most of it is actually built into void years, so it's all void years after 2021. And then Jameis has a small contract, but he was promised that he had a chance to be the starter, and that's why he joined them. He also got his LASIK. He can see again. That might help. That might cut down. He threw an incredible amount of yards, but he also averaged the same amount of touchdowns as interceptions. So. Yep. If he can fix that, then he'll be dynamite. But there's
I'm
sorry.
Totally yeah, no, you're all right. I'm never sold on Jameis, but he's like, oh yeah, LASIK, he can see better. But you were throwing to the wrong color, buddy. You can still see colors. No, honestly, that is definitely the 1 to watch, because these other quarterback situations, we know in New England, Mac Jones will be the guy. It's just when. Same with Fields in Chicago. And same with Trey Lance in San Fran. We do not know who the guy is going to be. I agree. It's probably Jameis. He offers you more potential. He's younger. He's actually a quarterback, whereas Taysom Hill's kind of a gadget player who did well coming in. But if you want an actual, Sean Payton's going to want someone who can sling the ball, and Jameis can flat out sling it. He just slings it in every different direction. And we'll see how long Payton can tolerate the turnovers. So it's really just about, if he protects the ball in camp, I think he comes out easily as the guy. But you never know.
There also is some talk about dark horse Ian Book. So Ian Book, is one of those very, very value rookie quarterbacks that people are talking about. Where he's not necessarily going to perform very well. He's going to be a great backup. He might make some moves and take over both of them. And probably not, but
no, probably not this year, but maybe later. Thomas, What do you think? Who do you got?
Obviously, it's going to, come down to camp. We're going to see how he performs. But given all of Jameis Winston's shortcomings, for fantasy purposes, which is why we're here, he's a back-end QB1. And so if he starts with this Saints offense, give him Michael Thomas, you give him another wide receiver, you give him Alvin Kamara. I know that he doesn't necessarily do the checkdowns a lot, but you start to get Alvin Kamara downfield a little bit more maybe, but he gets the job there. I believe you are looking at still what he's been his whole career, a back-end QB1. Yes, he turns the ball over a good amount, but he also throws a good amount of touchdown passes. He throws for a pretty good amount of yards as well. Now, I don't know that it's going to be the same scenarios like it was with those Buccaneers teams where they were having to play from behind all the time. He could be playing with the lead, and that could just completely change his play style. Taysom Hill, at least from what I saw last year, he's not a competent NFL quarterback. He can certainly make some throws when he's called upon 2 or 3 times a game, like he was with Drew Brees. He can run the ball very efficiently, but once defenses start to key onto that and figure that out, as you saw, that offense went stagnant. They stalled, and so I think for fantasy purposes, we want to see Jameis Winston there because we know that he can produce as a fantasy quarterback and elevate those around him. Taysom Hill, he's going to elevate his own fantasy value. I don't know that he does the same for everybody else around him.
Yeah, I agree 100%. I think Jameis is going to be the guy. I don't really see Taysom taking over, but it is just going to come down to the turnovers. Sean Payton doesn't tolerate turnovers. I think we see actually a big switch, as you mentioned, just because either they're playing ahead or the way Sean Payton coaches his system. I think he does a good job of making sure or preaching ball security, and Jameis knows how to do that. We might see a new Jameis Winston this year, and he is potentially QB1 territory, so definitely one to watch, and I'm curious how that plays out. Gentlemen, well done. We had a whole lot of good takes. If you had anyone else listening have any of your own takes, please let us know. Comment on our YouTube channel, Past the Projections. Facebook page, Past the Projections, same thing. We have our Instagram. We got our email if you ever want to talk to us, pasttheprojections@gmail.com, and talk to us about our league audits, which we're going to be doing again here later today, posting in the future for anybody who wants to have their league audited. And yeah, they're fun. If you haven't heard it yet, our league hosting one is posted up on our own website at pasttheprojections.buzzsprout.com, and it's fun. I thought we did an excellent job. How did you guys feel?
Yeah. I was a little disappointed with my ranking, but past that.
It wasn't too bad. I mean, kind of, stating the obvious of things that I feel like we already knew ourselves, but more kind of just shared it with the group at that point. But I'm excited to see how more and more of those continue to go. And if you are listening, obviously, to this episode, whether you're listening on Spotify, Apple Music, whatever it is, leave a like, leave a comment. Give us a follow. We'll make sure to get that read out on air. But especially with the audits, if you start to like what you hear and you want to have your league audited, definitely let us know, and we can start to get some things figured out here for the upcoming season.
Yeah, it's really fun. The league enjoyed it. They always love. Everyone likes to hear about their teams, especially when it's our guys, our buddies. We can talk a lot of crap about it later. So it plays out really well. Adam Skinner. For Thomas Lozano and Chris Roth out in Denver, Past Rejections crew, we will be back next week. Thank you for joining us.
This guy's full of shit. He's not a believer in Jalen Hurts.
You got A.J. Dillon and Henry Ruggs,
Oh, don't even. Nah, they're not. I'll put them in the same sentence.
And I didn't have to pay up.
Yeah.
Still Burrow.
How many guys do you have left on your board?
Who is left here?